think that's why they want it.
Because we have to come and
in fact, last year when I spoke to him, I was at the commemoration of the building. Mobility-wise, bad, but brain's still going. All right, well, you and I will talk. Yeah, I took mine out. They can't keep long enough. How's family doing?
oh, boy.
Every time. Yeah, I mean, Matt, the whole A&M college thing, they're still going to have to come down there. I told him, I said, get ready, they're not going to let you eat all the things. 2800 of this. They have a Zoom meeting for his outfit. I'm really impressed with it now. I mean, just even in the summer, the outfit thing is going to make sure they have their information. They're going to divide it into four groups. Try to keep them with the outfit in the class. That's pretty easy to find. They're going to get all 300 done by they're still going to have formation. They've already said that they're having the black or the khaki now. Everything else going. Well, no, it's really weird when anthropology class, but geophysics structure class is online. I prefer that to be in person. But that spring, Pacific Q is not one of those you can really do unless you're really smart. Yeah, I remember when Paisler I started. You got me with my mask on. What you said? What about Mac was going to talk to you? You didn't get no glare.
Catching up with some of my retiree friends. I haven't seen them forever. And Sandy probably said, I mean, they work on the so they're just $2,800 short. She showed me the picture of a female that's going to go in front of the military outside.
I was an aero engineer. I remember I was everything. I was in the class.
I typically don't do stuff like this, but he was so good when my dad died. I mean, because my dad was here, and he was retired. I mean, my brother-in-law, who was with us, was a retiree at their office for the stuff. He was a Navy captain. He said, man, you got to tell me this guy is hard. Just had that 5 or 6.
small.
We're smiling behind his family. We're back in, you're back in those days. We had no sneak everything. I got the no sneak. That must have been a lot of things. I didn't mean that. Did it look good?
Yeah.
You always do it too.
Carl Wilson Hall.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Well, we were happy that we retired because we were getting rats from the stores. So that was, glad we did that. We did have a couple of mice. Mice like that. Don't need.
Yeah.
Well, you know, at 101, this is a celebration.
Well, I'm glad that his son is here. Does he live in town?
Yeah.
I mean, if you have two, they had, what, 6 weeks down?
Well, in the older crowd.
I have trouble with my instructors. They said yes, they're putting in, but I haven't seen it yet. Like, you know, they get a picture, they get the dates.
Boy Scouts. We stopped and we're like,
Well, so the beach was even.
I think they emailed them all. Well, they mailed it. They got 3 out before I said, need to tell them this is not and this national thing for you. What are the first things as far as
I got you.
basically what you did after you
Well, that's a public
pay.
That's not part of it. But it's just that line of respect. Yeah, there must have been like
Can't put these things on
I
without them fogging up.
know.
I haven't had anything this year.
Hi. Good, how are you?
Hi.
Try to get something else. Somewhere along the line, I want to get it.
You tell him I said hello.
Ladies and gentlemen, please find your seats. The memorial will begin in a moment.
welcome to the memorial service for Colonel Steve L. dePyssler, United States Air Force, retired. I am Senior Master Sergeant Zach McKinney, and I will be your narrator for today. First, some comments on military protocol. During the memorial, you will be given cues on when to stand and be seated at the appropriate times. During the singing of the national anthem, military members should stand at the position of attention and not render a salute. Our civilian guests are invited to stand and place their right hand over their heart. Additionally, all military members should stand at the position of attention when military honors are rendered. During the memorial, please be mindful of the COVID-19 restrictions of wearing face masks and adhering to the social distancing guidelines. Finally, we request all electronic devices be turned off or set to vibrate for the duration of the memorial. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the 2nd Bomb Wing and the Barksdale Air Force Base community, we offer our heartfelt thanks to everyone for joining us today as we pay special tribute to Colonel Steve L. dePyssler, United States Air Force, retired. Colonel dePyssler was a valuable member of the United States Air Force, the Barksdale Air Force Base community, and the state of Louisiana. Colonel dePyssler led an incredible military and civilian life, and he will be missed by us all. We are pleased to have many dignitaries in attendance, both from the base and community, and we are especially pleased Colonel dePyssler's son to be with us today, Dr. Bruce dePyssler. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the presentation of the colors, the singing of the national anthem by Senior Airman Tessa Corrick, and the invocation by Chaplain Stephen Min. Honor Guard, present the colors.
Hold. Present. Arms.
Can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleam, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Mark. Stop. Unheard. Mark.
Chaplain Wynn will now come forward and deliver the invocation.
If you're willing and able, would you join me in a prayer or meditation? Almighty God, we thank you for gathering us together to celebrate and remember the life of retired Colonel Steve L. dePyssler. We give you thanks for the gift of life and for the ability to remember. To remember not only our own lives right now, but also to remember the lives lived by those we love. We thank you for Colonel dePyssler's legacy and spirit during his 38 years of active duty service across 6 military engagements and over 40 years of volunteer service. I pray that we would follow his example and goal of helping at least one person a day, every day. Please grant us clarity of mind. Please flood our thoughts and imaginations with fond memories of Colonel dePyssler. In addition, I pray that Colonel dePyssler's family and loved ones will encounter your presence and experience your peace, a peace that surpasses understanding, even amidst the most difficult and sorrowful seasons of life. Please send your Spirit to answer this prayer and meet us in this, our hour of need. God bless our military members, our veterans, and all those who serve our country. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Thank you, Barksdale Honor Guard and Senior Airman Corrick. Chaplain Wynn, thank you for those inspiring words. Today's memorial will be twofold. First, we will take a short walk through Colonel dePyssler's amazing life, followed by words of hope, and we will conclude the memorial with military honors. Colonel dePyssler lived a remarkable life. He touched many people on Barksdale and the state of Louisiana. Our first speaker is Colonel Michael Vilta, United States Air Force, retired. He will deliver remarks on A Friend Remembers.
Well, good morning. I'm happy to see so many could join us today. It's quite an honor and a little daunting task to be the first to come up and speak about somebody as remarkable as Steve dePyssler. I'm going to talk to you as a friend, if you will. And I think all of us here in the room today and those that could not join us would understand that one thing Steve was to anybody that he met was a friend. And he was a friend first before he became a mentor. I'm reminded when I was trying to think about what to say this morning, during my own career, one of my favorite phrases that I was taught as a young man was to be part of the solution. Be part of the solution. Get involved. This is what Steve embodied. He was the essence of the perspective of get involved, be part of the solution. And his start to that path was to become your friend. He would sit down and spend time talking to anybody who sought him out, asked for his advice, asked for his assistance, or just needed to be pointed in a direction and told, this is where you can find what you need to find. He did that from a heart of gold and a perspective of, I can make things better for you. It's a unique time this week, this time in history, if you will, with COVID-19 and the devastating impacts we have across the nation today. The civil unrest that we've seen that has been unlike anything of recent memory, if you will. And then I was watching Congressman John Lewis' recent service on the TV, and reminded that here was another man who had dedicated his life to the improvement of others, to the achievement and the aspiration of trying to reach that goal that all people are created equal. And I thought to myself, very worthy, and absolutely something we all take pride of in this country, that all people are created equal. But the thought that flashed through my mind when I thought about what to say this morning was, but not all people live equally. And I don't mean that from a perspective of have and have not, but I mean that from a perspective of what we do with our own lives. What we mean to other people. How do we choose to get involved? And again, for those that know Steve, and we will certainly hear more today and have seen more in press, Steve was a beacon to that corollary. That while we are created equal, we do not all live equally. he spent an entire life in service, dedicated to his country, dedicated after he retired 40 plus years to becoming a friend and a mentor to all those he crossed paths with. He represents the sacrifice, the dedication that is the best of humanity. What we should all want and desire to achieve in our own lives. To learn how to reach out, befriend each other, befriend somebody who's a complete stranger to us, has not crossed our path at this point in time in life, but does cross our path saying, I'm in need, I need some assistance, I need some help, or more importantly, I just need somebody to listen and say that they can help, that will provide a direction for me to move forward. Recently, where I work, we've been undergoing some leadership management team development. And part of the group effort has been to review gaming theory. And for those that have probably crossed paths with management styles in the gaming theory, you'll understand the bipolar division of a finite game versus an infinite game. And I won't go into the theories, but just to recognize that Steve represented an infinite view of the game of life. The infinite view is one that's characterized by a never-ending desire to improve. It's not about who's going to win, who's going to lose, who's right, who's wrong, and it's never-ending. It's an infinite game. The idea is you have a just cause, and Steve's just cause was veterans, veterans' families, and the friends of veterans and military members worldwide. That was Steve's, throughout all of that effort and throughout all those endeavors, underlying what Steve did day in and day out was the idea of friendship. I don't think he ever met somebody, not in my recollection, that he said, I just couldn't find a way to relate to that person. He found a way to reach out, be a friend, be a mentor, or to just be an advisor to just anybody I saw him ever cross paths with. I was privileged to be one of those individuals, not more than maybe about six and a half years ago, when I started to look forward and see my retirement on the horizon. I had to go through an out-processing brief with Steve and receive his perspective on what retirement would be and what it was like. Not really realizing that 26 some odd years earlier at the same base, I had probably received the opposite end of that bookend briefing, and that was the arrival brief at Barksdale Air Force Base. He not only greeted people coming to this base, but he also said farewell to people retiring and separating and leaving from this base. A unique legacy spent over a career of helping others. It was my advantage and distinct pleasure to have the opportunity to work with him and get to know him. To have him call me a friend. Reach out, ask my wife and I if we could escort him, drive him and his wife Gloria to a meeting or to a celebration for Christmas, or just to help him run errands across the base. I know each one of you has a story similar, an experience, and probably a book full of them that you could share with this and many others. Today, it's been my privilege to come up and talk to you about what it was like to know Steve, Colonel dePyssler, Colonel D, as he was known so much across the base, as a friend and as a mentor. I hope you'll join me in appreciating the life that he led and the calling that he represented in having us all do what we can to be a part of the solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel Vilta. Colonel dePyssler volunteered for over 40 years on Barksdale Air Force Base as he worked with many 2nd Bombing commanders. Our next speaker is Major General Andrew Jabera. He is the Director of Strategic Plans, Programs, and Requirements, Air Force Global Strike Command, and a former 2nd Bomb Wing commander. He will deliver remarks on Barksdale Remembers.
Of transitioning from military to civilian life can be very confusing. Colonel D felt very strongly that nobody should retire or separate from Barksdale Air Force Base without having applied for their VA benefits and their entitlements. His goal was, and I quote, to help one person a day for as long as I live. That's my goal, and it has been for years and years and years. Well, to do the math, for the amount of time he was running the Retiree Affairs Office, if you had 365 days a year, you got to add 10 for 10 leap years, mind you. That's how long we're talking about. That means Colonel dePyssler's goal was to help 14,975 people. And he did. He spent countless days helping widows navigate the bureaucratic world of the military life without their spouses. He worked tirelessly to honor veterans through his Purple Heart honoree events. He worked to get the word out to those who couldn't always get the word through not one, but two different newspapers. Today, I hope you noticed as you drove in from the West Gate how wonderful the flags looked on the drive-in, all Colonel dePyssler. His idea and his efforts made that happen. As any former 2nd Bomb Wing commander would know, if you were unfortunate enough to forget to put them out on Memorial Day or 4th of July. You heard about it from Steve pretty quick. Flight tested. All right, wow. So I can think of a lot of veterans that I've been blessed to know in my career, but I cannot think of any that gave so much of him or herself to the Barksdale community. I haven't even begun to tell you all the things that he accomplished. And if that was all that Colonel D did, I'm confident we would gather here today and we would honor that service and that sacrifice for our community. But I would add that amazingly, Steve dePyssler's service to the community through his volunteer work was not his greatest contribution. I think Steve's greatest contribution was as a husband, a father, a mentor, and as a friend. Steve and his wife Gloria, who unfortunately could not be here today, enjoyed, what can only be described as a long love story. 75 years of marriage. 75 years. I don't know anyone that can brag to that, and I suspect many of you in the audience don't know anyone that can match that either. That's amazing and such a blessing. Bruce, I'm not going to presume to talk to you about the influence your father had on your life, except to say he must be very proud of you. I can speak for myself as a former commander of the installation about his mentorship. It may not surprise you that Colonel dePyssler was not shy about mentoring me anytime he had a difference of opinion about what we did at Barksdale Air Force Base. I was one of literally dozens of wing commanders to him. Every 18 months to 2 years, we would come and go, and he remained. He never, I will share, he never did get my name right. One of the first time I went to meet him, dePyssler didn't come to the wing commander reported to the retiree affairs office to meet Colonel dePyssler. And someone told him my name was Anthony, and that stuck in his mind, and he never got it out of his mind. And Miss Janice she and I laughed about that for years. He was tireless, he was insistent, and he would not take no for an answer. And I would add that he was right. I was a better commander for him. He was a husband, he was a father, he was a mentor, he was a friend. Steve, we all remember that you were here. We remember that you stood up for what was right, and you left this world a better place. I hope you know that the men and women of Barksdale will miss you. And I will too. Thank you.
Thank you, Major General Jabera. Colonel dePyssler left his footprints everywhere, and the state of Louisiana is no exception. Our final speaker is Colonel Joey Strickland, United States Army, retired, and the Secretary of the Louisiana Department of Veterans Affairs. He will deliver remarks on the state of Louisiana remembered.
Dr. dePyssler, Mayor Walker, Lieutenant General Elder, General Jabera, I think I pronounced that right, General. Other distinguished guests, fellow veterans, ladies and gentlemen. I am deeply honored to have the opportunity to say a few words about my good and longtime friend, Colonel Steve dePyssler. I got to know Steve back in 1998. I've known him for over 22 years. I bring regards and condolences on behalf of a fellow veteran, Governor John Bell Edwards. Just recently, when I informed the governor of Steve's passing, he was saddened to hear that, and he issued a statement from his office counting it a blessing to have known him and marveling at the legacy that Steve has left the veterans of this state. The governor was here last year and participated in Steve's 100th birthday and just had a great evening with Steve. As I mentioned, I first met Steve back in 1998 as a newly appointed Director of Veterans Affairs. I'd only been retired from the United States Army about two and a half years, and I was really learning my job. And I was looking around the state at veterans' needs, and I realized that Louisiana was in trouble. We were behind every state in the nation in terms of what we offered our 300,000 veterans. And I heard about Steve, Colonel dePyssler, and so I called him. And I drove up here and I met him. And although I was much younger, we instantly hit it off. And we developed not only a close personal relationship, but a very close professional relationship. I spoke to him many times throughout the years on veterans and family issues, everything from widows' indemnity compensation, veterans' benefits, and burial honors. A lot of people don't know this, but it was because of Colonel dePyssler's letter 2 years ago to Secretary Wilkie that I was appointed chairman of the National Cemetery Committee in Washington and just reappointed about a week ago. Colonel dePyssler never hesitated to let me know about a veteran's concern, but he always said it as a recommendation, not as a directive. Early on in my career as Secretary of the Louisiana Department of Veterans Affairs, he called me many times to advocate not only for the construction of the Northwest Louisiana Veterans Home outside of the gate here in Bossier, but also the Northwest Louisiana Veterans Cemetery in Keithville. Back in those days, Louisiana only had 2 homes, the old Jackson home and the newly constructed Monroe home. And we were authorized 5 homes, and we needed to raise money, and we needed to get the political will, and we needed to get the veterans community behind building 3 more homes and building 5 state veteran cemeteries. We had no state veteran cemeteries in those days, only the National Cemetery in Baton Rouge. And veterans up here, as you can expect, didn't want to pass away and be buried all the way in Baton Rouge and have to have their loved ones drive 4 hours to see them. So I spoke to Colonel dePyssler and to Mayor Lowell Walker and to Ken Epperson, Commissioner Epperson, about that. And I remember that Steve told me, he said, Joey, he said, why don't we just start here in the Northwest? He said, let's see if we can't build the 3rd home here, and let's see if we can't build the first state veteran cemetery here. I had the grant money, but I didn't have the land. And that's where Steve dePyssler and Lowell Walker and Ken Epperson and others came in. And we got the land, and we had the grant. And we talked to the political folks in Baton Rouge and in Washington. And lo and behold, we built a veterans home here, the 3rd one, and we built the first state veteran cemetery, which is in Keithville. He ensured that I knew members, and back in those days, of the Caddo Parish Committee. Ken Epperson was on that committee. He was a very good friend of Steve dePyssler, and all of us working together, we were able to accomplish that. From that beginning, we built other homes. We now have our 5 beautiful homes throughout the state, taking care of almost 700 veterans. And we have 5 beautiful state veteran cemeteries. We just dedicated the last one 2 months ago in Jennings. And that's what we're authorized. To both of them, to Lowell Walker, to Ken, and to Steve, I owe much personal and professional gratitude. During the construction phase of both projects, Colonel dePyssler was very persistent, as the general stated, and he continued to call me monthly for updates until the projects were complete. It got to where my assistant would say, Colonel dePyssler is on the line, sir. Hey, Steve, where are we at with that project? And I'd have to go through a litany of phases. Oh, okay. When both projects were completed, He was with me when Governor Blanco dedicated the home and the cemetery, and I have a great picture in my office of me sitting next to Steve when we were dedicating the veterans home. I always knew that I could count on him for anything I needed to get done for veterans, especially here in the Northwest. Years later, when our brigade, our infantry brigade, and our airmen and sailors were fighting in Iraq, Afghanistan, I had 2 sons fighting in Iraq, another son in Afghanistan. I was advocating for the Department of Veterans Affairs to be elevated to cabinet level. In those days, we were not a cabinet level department. The secretary, which was a director back in those days, could not go to the governor and personally advocate to the governor on behalf of our state's veterans, and that bothered me. I didn't want to have to go through a deputy secretary in order to get to the governor. So I started advocating for the department to be elevated to cabinet level. There's 21 cabinets, or 21 agencies in a governor's cabinet, and there was another agency that was vying for that position as well. And Governor Blanco wanted to elevate that particular agency to cabinet level and not Veterans Affairs. So, guess what I did? I called Colonel dePyssler. And I said, Steve, we need to be a cabinet level department. And I said, I can't advocate to the governor because they're going to think that the only reason I'm doing that is because I want to be secretary. I said, that's not true. I don't care who's secretary. I just want the secretary, whoever that person is, to be able to go to the governor with veterans issues. Steve said, got it. I remember so well, got it. He started writing letters every week in big, bold, black magic marker to Governor Blanco advocating for us to be a cabinet level agency. When that didn't work, he got veterans to start writing. She was getting 40 letters a day. A month later, I get a call from the chief of staff. Joey, the governor wants you to call that colonel down at Barksdale and call him off. We're going to elevate you to cabinet level. So we're a cabinet, and I'm the secretary. That was Steve dePyssler. A lot of people don't know that. More recently, he created a grant for the Northwest Louisiana Veterans Home to support quality of life issues, putting in a large sum of his own money into the fund. And he continued to raise funds for the home throughout the years. That fund has grown to more than $250,000. As was mentioned, he self-funded the huge eagle that you see as you enter the Veterans Home and the battlefield cross at the entrance of the Northwest Louisiana State Veterans Cemetery. Little did he know that he and his lovely wife, Gloria, would become 2 of the home's most honored and treasured residents. Colonel dePyssler, as was mentioned by General Jabera, served nearly 40 years active duty in the U.S. Army Air Corps, the U.S. Air Force, throughout World War II, the Korean War, my war, actually it was before my war in Vietnam, but he was also in Vietnam. He was in the French Indochina War. He also held every rank during his career, from private to colonel. Quite impressive, to say the least. After his retirement, he went on to spend the next 40 years, as it's been said, as a volunteer, helping military retirees and their families to obtain their benefits. He personally, and I know this for a fact, assisted thousands of widows of deceased veterans to receive their widow's indemnity compensation as a result of their loved one's service. Colonel dePyssler loved all veterans, but his heart was always with the Air Force, and his heart was always with Barksdale. His service to veterans brings to mind one of my favorite quotes, one that serves as our department's motto. General Omar Bradley, in 1948, when he was serving as Secretary of Veterans Affairs, once said, and I quote, "We are dealing with veterans, not procedures. We are dealing with their problems, not ours," unquote. That's just what Colonel Steve dePyssler did every day. Every day, he spent his life getting up, getting into his little red truck, and driving to Barksdale to the Retiree Affairs Office to assist our state's veterans. At 101 years of age, it is safe to say that Colonel Steve dePyssler's life revolved around service to his country, his state's veterans, and his community. We should all strive to have a heart of service like he did. I personally, as a friend, as a colleague, will miss him greatly. Rest in peace, my good friend. God bless you on your journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Strickland. As we remember Colonel dePyssler for his years of faithful service, Chaplain John Lee will come forward and deliver a message of hope.
Good morning, everyone. Again, thank you for joining physically and virtually. I used to be the Mission Support Group chaplain for the last 3 years, and now with Maintenance Group. Within my time of service, I had the privilege and honor to work around retired Colonel Steve Lee dePyssler. I remember the time where he would still drive with his Saturn SUV to come to his office in the age of 100. That always amazed and impressed me. It made me wonder, how is it still possible to drive in that age? As well as, which insurance company is faithful enough to give him the insurance to drive. One thing for sure, when he was on the road, I will be extra careful not to interfere where he was going to. I cannot imagine enough that the only reason he would still drive to the office is quoting what he said, "I've always had one goal in life, and that is to help at least one person a day, every day." There was a driving force and a passion that he had until the age of 100 and recently turning 101 back in 21st of July. Another day with all the unpredictable climate changes in Louisiana, raining. I had the greatest, best opportunity, honor and privilege to escort him with my umbrella from the parking lot to the building. And as you know and expect what to come out from him, he looked at my name and rank and said, "Thank you, Captain Lee," and go along with his walker. But now, the legend is in our heart to carry, and he's in forever rest. And for sure, it was more than enough time for him to serve, and it is the best time to get some rest. As I prepare my message, which I can call it as an ancient wisdom, other words, as my faith literature Bible, there was one verse that stood out in my heart. And the verse says, his master said to him, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much more. Enter into the joy of your master." And yes, Colonel D, husband, dad, buddy, friend, mentor, teacher, and an American airman. Well done, and now enjoy entering into the joy of your master. Please, please, now get some rest. And Dr. Bruce, and those family members who joined virtually, we cannot thank you enough how great he was to us. And for sure, for the family as well. On behalf of United States Air Force, please receive our condolences for the loss of your loved one. And just to add one more thing, of thinking, what will he tell me at last? The last thing that he will tell me. For sure, he will say, keep your good works and be there for one another until your time is over. Be an American airman, and be the best. Now, he is in forever sleep. But one thing that does not change and does not stop is the legacy that he left with us to carry. I know that he wants all of us to be impactful to one another and help one another to carry his legacy, which becomes our legacy. And it is our time to the best to carry on. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain Lee, for those inspirational words of hope. Ladies and gentlemen, Colonel dePyssler's son, Dr. Bruce dePyssler, will make some final comments.
Hello, everyone. Let me begin by thanking everyone here for recognizing my father and the work he performed here in Barksdale, Bossier, Shreveport, across the state. I'm especially grateful to Fred Acosta, his office mate in the retiree office. As I live in North Carolina, Fred's been a valuable point man for me in all matters concerning my father. My mother, my sisters, Carol and Stephanie, and I are especially grateful to Sarah Ann Custer, Colonel Custer. Sarah, your work in the Mission Support Building named in honor of my father meant so very much to him. But just so you know, Sarah Ann, my wife, Kayatu, has as big a crush on my father as you do. I also want to thank his crew at the office, his team around the state, the city, Mayor Walker, Kenneth Epperson. You all participated in so many projects with him. I did not follow my father's path into the armed services. He encouraged me to follow my own path. I live and work in North Carolina as a university professor and a documentary filmmaker. My father's parents, immigrants, are from Belgium, the Flemish types, from around Bruges. So where I began, I could provide a list, but a lot of that's been itemized here already. His military record, astonishing. I get that D-214, whatever it's called. Everybody wants it. I was half expecting the guy at Jiffy Lube to ask for it the other day. Journalists like to start with what they call a lead. It's the part you remember if you stop reading after the first paragraph. Here's the lead. We already know it. My goal in life is to help one person every day as long as I live. It's very simple. Very selfless. Every news story I've read about my father, pulled that one quote out. When I sent it to my friends, my colleagues, my students, when I sent stories about my father, they all pull out that quote. Here's Jalea, an 18-year-old freshman who loves photography as much as I do. Ah, DP, that's me. DP at the college. He was a real legend. He really was 101, going on 30, LOL. Okay, kids these days, she is 18. And then in a follow-up text hours later, she just sends these words. My goal in life is to help one person a day, every day as long as I live. Truth be told, my father had already helped 4 individuals each morning before he got up. Every member of his family, even before he rolled out of bed in the dark and had his Raisin Bran flakes and that god-awful, watered-down orange juice. Evidently, you can stretch out a can of frozen orange juice considerably with that practice? Well, there was that depression thing during his formative years. And anyway, that's some savings that can be directed to a child's scholarship or starting a veteran's home or some other worthy cause. Just under 20 years, I lived under my father's roof. Marchfield in Riverside, where I was born in 1951, Clark Air Force Base in the Philippines, Washington, D.C., Minot, Ramey Air Force Base in Puerto Rico, and Offutt in Nebraska. 20 years, 1/5 of his life. And a tad less than 1/3 of mine. His specialty, fixing screwed up base supply offices. It could take a year, and then we'd start to see him again. My dad looked around and figured out what needed to be done to create a more beloved community, a more beloved world. Words expressed by Congressman John Lewis, another good mayor we've lost. Let's take Minot. Imagine Minot Air Force Base, Cold War, circa mid-1960s. My dad looked around and saw that I was bored to tears. Summer. He starts the Little League. From the ground up, figures it all out, works the phones. My God, has anyone here seen him work those phones? That drill, Colonel D working the phones, the definition of perseverance. Gets the tryouts going. Oh yeah, 2 baseball fields need to be built. Work the phones. Uniforms for kids. Money needed. Call Cummins Diesel Corporation. They've got money. Of course he's a coach as well, and we come close to making it to Williamsport. Winter. Sunset Loop, Minot. These kids need something to do outdoors in the cold. Aha, an ice skating rink. This one he did himself, except for the phone thing. He had to get a light installed. One inebriated neighbor didn't like the idea of an ice skating rink in the center of Sunset Loop. They had words. One of the few times I ever saw this. This man got the worst of it. He could not see the virtue of a skating rink for bored kids. My father called him an idiot. Seldom happened that my father would diss another individual. But trust me, you did not want to be at the receiving end of those 3 syllables. The ice skating rink was a hit with the kids. Last I heard these 3 syllables uttered by my father, we were discussing America's current political situation. And they were directed at, well, I'll let you fill in the blank. My father would just use this opportunity to speak his mind. I learned this trick from him. I am my father's son, and a civilian at that. There's pain and suffering across this land. My father joins 150,000 now, who have now lost their lives to COVID-19. That's 3 Vietnams, 50 9/11s. How do you measure the grief? The loss. Our countrymen have died from virus, yes. More importantly, they've died, if you ask me, because of irresponsible leadership, cruel nihilism at the very top. I go on here a bit, I will skip it, but you understand what I'm thinking. Let's get back to fixing things. Let me back up a little bit. Most of you here are members of our nation's most trusted and cherished national institution, the Armed Forces, an American institution my father spent his lifetime serving loyalty. You have a lot to think about these days, indeed. Let's get back to fixing things, to solving problems. In my dad's book, it's helping selflessness. It's problem solving that matter. recall our lead. My goal in life is to help one person every day as long as I live. There's a gospel song Mahalia Jackson made famous. It was written by Alma Irene Thompson, a neighbor of my father on the south side of Chicago. Its lyrics parallel my dad's quote, "If I can help somebody, my living shall not be in vain." John Lewis, like John Lewis, my dad, early in life, recognized what matters and what doesn't in this life, what's worth pursuing and what's not, what's worth doing and what's pure trivia. He was loyal to his wife, to his family, to his troops, to the vets, to the Air Force, and to his beloved country. He was fair, he was open, he accepted others. I show up one day with an African immigrant, and when did that become something for this nation not to be proud of? We're a land built of immigrants, willing and unwilling immigrants. My dad's response, open arms. And the Kadiatu, Colonel D, Mutual Acceptance Society begins. Money, it's a good thing to have, not for bling or fancy cars, but so cool, you can give it away to help others. Hey, let's start a college fund for Marion. She's the 13-year-old who arrived in my life alongside my wife. There's Chicago High School. There's his Chicago High School, Mount Carmel, to help out too. Above all, get things done. Fix and improve and label and organize every little thing you can. Yesterday, I asked Fred's wife how she met my father. Oh, he wanted us to get golf carts to help retirees get from the parking lot into Hogan Hall. While going through his folders, I ran across one labeled Vets Home Recommendations, 13 in all. This is a 100-year-old man, born in 1919, shortly after the First World War, refusing to rest on his laurels. Stuff to make better after all. Here's a couple suggestions. This is number 12. Scissors for breakfast cereal boxes. Every morning, residents struggle to open cereal boxes. Most residents have to have the servers open their boxes. Suggestion, buy small scissors and put in metal boxes on the 50 tables. Notice how he's trying to empower people. 11, office supplies. Following items committee, we need this in the library, is basically saying here. We need a shredder, we need a copier. Here's the prices, here's the item numbers. The print on the menu is too small. There's a word regular there, it should be that size. The plaques. The 4 giver plaques have been removed from the front lobby and hidden near the kitchen. Strongly recommend they be moved to the lobby and placed so it can be read. This is my favorite. You have to understand that a smart-ass university professor, a son, reading this one, running this one by his dad. This is a suggestion about the suggestion box. Okay? Box is now hidden in the library. Move to a visible area in the main lobby. Suggest a printed sign next to it. If my dad was here, I would obviously tease him about that. Suggestion about the suggestion box. And he would call me a wise guy. He would say, okay, wise guy. I loved my father. He was a great dad. He was a great man. The last things he was worried about were my mother, his newsletter, paying his taxes, not avoiding her. He was a man, he probably didn't realize this, but he was a man that had enlightenment values. He had an optimism that we're rational men and women, that we can find flaws, we can find things that aren't going right, and we can stubbornly but patiently I do not know what natural and divine forces were conjured up to give us this life, this consciousness we have, this ability we have to hope and love and suffer, this ability to know what we do and do not know, this ability to shape our destiny in large and small ways. One thing I do know is that I learned from my father, this gift of life and consciousness is not something to be squandered. Let me close with a quote from my Facebook posting from my wife. I lost my amazing father-in-law yesterday, she writes. Rest in power, Steve. You lived to be 101. 101 beautiful years. And I am only better to have experienced part of it. I have learned so much from you as the father of my husband. She uses some adjectives there before husband, which are way too flattering to. She seems to think, perhaps mistakenly, that I have picked up some of my father's better traits. She describes him as kind, caring, honest, stubborn, supportive, handsome, super smart, and a fixer of all problems. Thank you for grooming my husband, she writes. She concludes, your son will miss you so much. I'm going to miss you. Your daughters and wife are going to miss you. Your team at the office is going to miss you. All the people you have helped and taken care of are going to miss you. Shreveport will miss you, Bossier will miss you, the base will miss you. All the widows you take care of will miss you. And guess what, Steve? You deserve it, because you earned it. We continue to love and celebrate you. Rest in peace, soldier. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Paisler. Ladies and gentlemen, as we reflect in years to come, we can say that Colonel D, as we all like to call him, was an advocate for local causes, chaired numerous committees, served his country, and was truly an American hero, a Barksdale legend. Colonel dePyssler epitomized the Air Force's core values: integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all we do. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the rendering of military honors.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated.
President of the United States Air Force, grateful nation. Please accept this flag as a symbol of our appreciation for your loving and honorable and faithful service.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the memorial service. We thank Colonel dePyssler for his military service, his service to the architects community, and the state of Louisiana. Thank you all for attending, and please join us at 12 o'clock at the 2nd Bomb Wing Headquarters building for a B-52 flyover as a final salute to Colonel dePyssler. Again, thank you for attending, and have a great day.